Welcome everyone. If you're joining us from the states, territories or islands of the jurisdiction of Australia, I hereby acknowledge we meet on Aboriginal land, always was, always will be. This is a podcast or vodcast under the auspices of John Menadew's Policy Forum, Pearls and Irritations. Please note we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, April the 24th, Australian Eastern Summer Time. This is important to note because with events in Gaza and now with the Israel-Iran hostilities, anything could change at any time. Joining us to discuss the proposition that the dispossession and assault of Palestinians started in 1948, not 2023, is the great Ali Kazak. Ali is a former Palestinian ambassador, a diplomat, a publisher, editor, writer, commentator. Ali came to Australia in 1970. He's an Australian citizen. Ali published and edited Background Briefing from 1987 to 1993. He wrote the book The Jerusalem Question in 1997, and he's the author of Australia and the Arabs 2012. In 1981, the Palestinian Liberation Organisation appointed him as Palestine's representative in Australia and the region. His diplomacy resulted in New Zealand's recognition of the PLO in 1982 and later recognition of the State of Palestine by Vanuatu, Papua New Guinea and East Timor. He was non-resident ambassador to these countries. And Ali's influence and impact in Australia is clear with the establishment of cross-party parliamentary Friends of Palestine from 1999 in Australia, New Zealand and various state parliaments. He was influential in the Australian Labor Party's change policy on Palestine. Ali, welcome. I acknowledge your distress and grief about the plight of your Palestinian people in Gaza, 34,000 plus estimated dead, tens of thousands injured, bodies unrecoverable from the rubble of mass graves in the latest news reports. Ali, I know you're gravely frustrated with the Australian mainstream media's failure to describe this as Israel's bloodbath in Gaza and as clear evidence of a genocidal intent. Can you now acknowledge that the plight of the Palestinians, with images and reports which have reached those of us outside Gaza, has moved the entire world community to greater recognition of your cause?
Well, thank you very much, Quentin. Yes, you are absolutely right, but this is due to the alternative media and the social media much more than the mainstream media. The mainstream media, unfortunately, is very biased in its coverage, and this is nothing new. We have been suffering out of this for years of very biased pro-Israeli coverage from the mainstream media. And I have made numerous complaints throughout the years and many others also about this one-sided coverage. And more so is what they do not cover. Israel's violations is on a daily basis, the killing, the collective punishment, and so on. And this is hardly covered in the mainstream media.
Ali, in this limited opportunity we've got here, list for us, please, the clear examples in the current situation that we're all absorbing and observing, the clear examples you rely on to assert the IDF's cabinet-directed actions in Gaza is of clear genocidal intent.
Let me give you some quotes from Israeli leaders. The Israeli President Herzog said, "It is and I quote, it is an entire nation out there that is responsible, and we will fight until we break their backbone." Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu, in a letter to Israeli soldiers and officers, said, "This is the war between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. We will not let up on our mission until the light overcomes the darkness." And then he cited the biblical story of the total destruction of the Amalek. This is biblical passage. This biblical passage reads, "Now go attack Amalek and prescribe all that belongs to him. Spare no one, but kill alike men and women, infants and sucklings, oxen and sheep, camels and asses." And then the head of the Jewish religious school, Rabbi Eliyahu Mali, urged his IDF soldiers, students, to kill all Palestinians, including infants, children, women, and elderly. He told them, quote, "The Torah does not allow you to let every soul live. The terrorists of today are the children of the past." When asked about what should be done to infants and elderly, Mali simply answered the same. And then we have the Israeli Defense Minister, Gallant, said, "We are imposing a complete siege on Gaza. No electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we will act accordingly." And Quentin, indeed, they acted accordingly. They, as you mentioned, killed so far over 34,000, including more than 14,000 children, 9,200 women, 364 doctors and health workers, 135 journalists, and 152 United Nations workers. The wounded is over 81,000, and they dispossessed more than 2 million people. They destroyed so far 360,000 houses. This is equivalent to the killing of the entire ACT population, and the destruction equal to the destruction of 119 towers the size of the World Trade Center. And we know what the United States did for the destruction of 2 of those, buildings. They destroyed banks, bakeries, cultural centers, 32 hospitals, more than 400 schools and universities, 290 mosques, 3 churches, even the zoo. They destroyed, killing all the animals. Isn't that clear a war of genocide? If it is not a war of genocide, I don't know what the war of genocide is.
Okay, and we noted the International Court of Justice's conditional declaration on genocide and its warning that is still on foot. The most recent thing that got through to Australians was the death of Australian citizen Zomi Frankham from the World Central Kitchen aid targeting, for which the IDF apologised and acknowledged an egregious targeting error. Is there a pattern of IDF denial when these incidents do get through to the Western supporters of Israel?
This is always the case. They always deny, and when the facts are presented and they cannot deny it anymore, they always say, "Oh, well, this is mistake," or, "we will investigate." But you never hear anything after that. And, the destruction of all these are the mosques, hospitals, schools, universities, accidental. They destroyed 126 ambulances. Are they all, sort of by mistakes, accidentals? Of course not. It is it is a clear attempt and conscious attempt to destroy everything. And this is exactly what they are doing. And this is what the whole world is seeing.
I note that the IDF and Israel has failed to provide evidence to an independent inquiry into alleged Hamas infiltration of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Workers Agency. Is that perhaps part of the pattern of obfuscation and not being held to account even by those allies like Australia and the United States?
That's the problem. This is the problem, is that, the United States and Australia and mainly the Anglo-Saxon group of countries, what is called the Five Eyes, they are the main problem in giving this carte blanche to Israel to do whatever it wants.
There's geopolitical support for Israel, and particularly now with the hostilities with Iran after the Damascus raid and the launching of Iran's drones and missiles directly onto Israeli territory. Doesn't that now force countries like Australia and the United States to clearly state, if this escalates into a conflict with Iran, we'll all back Israel?
Backing Israel for what? To do more killing? To use nuclear bombs? Backing, the Iranians were retaliating to Israel's, bombarding their consulates in Damascus, killing a number of Iranian officials. The problem, as I said, is with the United States and its allies, including Australia, where, Quentin, compare the stand of the United States, Australia, and Britain, and those Five Eyes, so-called group of countries, to their stand with Ukraine. Where with the Ukraine, they give full support to the Ukrainians, military, financial, political, just name it, because against Russian aggression and occupation, right? How could they justify taking exactly the opposite stand in supporting Israel's occupation, Israel aggression, Israel killing, and compare what Israel is doing now in for the last 7 months in Gaza to what Russia did in Ukraine? There is no comparison. Can you imagine if
presumably, Ali, it's because Israel is a declared democracy, as is Ukraine, or declares itself to be a democracy, such as we know democracies are corruptible as well as authoritarian states.
Yeah, this is a joke. This is a joke. This is false democracy. Okay, let's speak about Israel's democracy. In 1947-48, they launched Plan Dalet, or Plan D, which aiming to occupy as much of Palestine as possible and ethnically cleanse as many Palestinians as possible in order to make the Jewish minority in Palestine majority and the Palestinian majority minority. And then they declared the State of Israel on 78% of Palestine, far beyond what the United Nations partition gave them for a Jewish state. So it is a forced democracy to start with. Imagine then if for example, Japan invaded Australia or sent settlers, to Australia, claimed Australia theirs, and, they sent, 3 million, for example, Japanese, ethnic cleansed, the majority of Australians to New Zealand and could say they speak English there. You can go and live in there, and then and leaving 1 million Australians, because no power can finish all people, and then they declare that they establish a democratic state. Would that be democracy? And what sort of democracy is this when you occupy others, deny them their most basic human rights, and collectively punishing them, and claiming democracy? What sort of democracy is this? This is a joke. Israel is not a democracy. It could be a democracy for Jews. It's exactly like South Africa was a democracy to white, but does anyone regard the apartheid regime as a democratic regime?
You've raised some very good points there. You've raised some very good points there. You've made me think about West Papua in our region and the Indonesian mass migration of Indonesians to West Papua. The same sort of thing happened, turning the Fijians into a minority. So they're very good points you've raised. But can I come back at it this way, perhaps to get the discussion onto what influence can be brought to bear, not only to resolve the matter, but this way, Ali. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong has restated that recognition of Palestine via a two-state solution is still the pathway to peace. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Australia has historic and moral duty towards the Palestinian people, because Australia played a major role for the partition of our country in order to facilitate the establishment of a Zionist regime in Palestine, resulting in that regime ethnically cleansing our people. I was born in Haifa. I'm denied the right to be to go and live in my country, in the city of Haifa, when any Jew from anywhere in the world can go to my country and claim citizenship straight away in Israel. Is this, again, this is the type of Israeli democracy, Quentin? So and on the other hand, Australia, from the when they supported the partition of Palestine into two states, they supported the two-state solution. But how could Australia justify 48? How could Australia justify, recognizing one state and not the other, and claim at the same time that it have an even-handed policy? This is a joke. So it is time. In fact, over time, for Australia to recognize the state of Palestine as much as they recognized Israel.
Well, let's see where this goes. Ali, in the last day or so, the United States Congress has approved further aid and assistance, not only to Ukraine, but also to Israel. And the overarching geopolitical, geostrategic dynamic of this is the Iran-Israel situation. The United States has vetoed a draft resolution that recommended to the 193-member UN General Assembly that the State of Palestine be admitted to membership of the United Nations. Britain and Switzerland abstained, while the remaining 12 Council members voted yes. The United States continues to strongly support a two-state solution. The US remains your biggest obstacle to a breakthrough, doesn't it? How close are you to winning United States declarative support?
Well, I'm not really optimistic with the United States position, and change of policy, because United States regard Israel as a military base to serve its interest in the Middle East. I strongly don't believe that the United States and Britain wanted peace in our region. Remember, Britain supported, adopted Zionism in 1917 in exchange, and that was the agreement between Britain and the Zionists, that the Zionists will serve British imperialist interests in the Arab world. For
obvious strategic interests in the British interests.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm trying to get to the point where it seems the tragedy of this, Ali, is that the geostrategic interests of these powers has trumped the humanitarian catastrophe that we're witnessing now, and there seems to be no way through this.
No, that's right, and that's where we need countries like Australia and Canada and Europe to step in, because the danger is to leave it to the United States. Australia can play a major role in changing and influencing the United States stand.
But Ali, we're all forced to pick a side, particularly with Iran and its what it's called its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah. We're all forced to pick a side. How can you break that?
Why we are forced to do that? Australia is an independent country, and Australia needs the United States as much as the United States need Australia. And Australia is a member of the group of Five Eyes, and it can influence the United States stand. And Australia have different policies when it suits interest. For example, there is some changes in Australia's policy from the United States towards China, for example. Australia, took different stand and withdrew from Vietnam, before the United States ended that war. And that played also a very important role in changing the United States policy towards Vietnam during the war. So there are precedents where Australia can play a positive role. And that's where, everyone is extremely disappointed with Anthony Albanese's government, that, they are not taking that independent, positive role and playing that positive role in international affairs.
Well, it's obvious that Albanese doesn't think that Australia has much influence anyhow. I'll get to a question about domestic response to this catastrophe shortly. But for our audience and my own sake, Ali, I want you to please address this question. Help me to understand, and our audience to understand, those who are lacking knowledge like myself, the genesis and evolution of Hamas in Gaza as an armed militia which took over civil governance.
Well, Hamas is a national Islamic movement, for the liberation of Palestine from Israel's colonialism. On the other hand, there are, why the international community and those Western governments never speak about, the religious, extremist, racist, Jewish parties in Israel, such as the National Religious Party, which is led by the Minister of Finance, Smotrich, and the Jewish Power Party, led by Minister of National Security, Ben Gvir, and the Likud Party. The Likud Party, in its constitution, it's against the right of Palestine to exist, and they are for
and these extremist elements. Sorry to cut in, but these extremist elements also have the capacity to assassinate Israeli leaders who are prepared to go down the track of the two-state solution. And particularly with what's known as the settler movement, which has been reported in mainstream SBS, for example, in looking at the settler momentum over the last 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they assassinated Rabin, you know, and you know, in fact, Rabin's wife, Mrs. Rabin, accused Netanyahu of, you know, also, you know, playing part and against for the assassination of Rabin. You know. You know, so the problem is that, you know, when they speak about, you know, at least here we have the two sides. Hamas, and Hamas was democratically elected in 2006, you know, and on the other hand, you know, the occupier and oppressor and colonizer, you know, Jewish parties, extremists, and so on. But they focus on Hamas, the oppressed and the occupied, but not on the occupiers and so on. So, you know, here is the balance? You know, it is clear hypocrisy and double standard. And that's something we have been suffering out of for years. I just may give you another example. You know, I mean, when we speak about you know, and you know, Quentin, you know, very often, you know, we are asked to recognize the right of Israel to exist. Now, you know, this begs the question: is that what is Israel? And you know, what is the ideology governing in Israel? And what is the Palestine question? And if you don't mind, you know, I'd like to address those issues because they are the central of the conflict in our region. You know,
well, it's about possession and dispossession. Yes.
More than that, you know, I mean, from the father of Zionism, Herzl, in his book, The Jewish State, in 1896, described his project as colonial project. And the first Zionist conference in 1897 described also the project as a colonial project. On the other hand, all the mainstream parties in Israel are Zionist. They belong, and you know, to the Zionist ideology. So, you know, and we are facing a colonialist project. And when they established Israel in 1948, they ethnically cleansed, as we mentioned, over 70% of the Palestinian people and denied us our right to return, mainly because it happened that we were born from non-Jewish mother, according to, you know, that ideology, you know. So it, you know, this is the core of the whole Palestine issue: is the right of the Palestinian refugees to return back home. You know, so our real problem is that with that ideology, colonialist, racist ideology, and that's where, you know, the international law and the United Nations resolutions, you know, clearly, you know, against, you know, for, you know, calling for the elimination of colonialism and racism. No one can coexist with colonialism and racism. So our problem is with that ideology. We have, and we always, and this is very important, Quentin, we distinguish between Zionists and Jews. Our enemy is Zionism, our oppressors, not the Jews. And that's why we raised the slogan. We say not every Jew is a Zionist and not every Zionist is a Jew, to make the distinction between the two. And the PLO proposed in 1968 our first peace proposal, and that is for the establishment of a democratic, secular, non-sectarian state in Palestine, where Jews, Christians, and Muslims all live under equally under the law. They refused our peace proposal. In 1986, as a result of United States pressure and Australia and so on, we accepted the two-state solution. And we proposed the two-state solution and recognized the right of Israel to exist. Again, they refused our second peace proposal for the establishment of two states. And everyone can see them building, Jewish colonies on the occupied territories. So if they are to withdraw, intending to withdraw and recognize the two-state solution, the question is that why they are building Jewish colonies in the West Bank and Jerusalem. Their intention is to continue with the colonialist project, what they call Eretz Israel, for the establishment of the greater state of Israel. And that is, the Eretz Israel, according to their maths, include all of Palestine plus territories from neighboring countries. And that's what they've been doing. Every country in the world, its borders stay the same, except Israel. Always, every few years get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger towards that Eretz Israel state, the greater state of Israel.
I understand, Ali. I noticed that Israel's head of military intelligence has resigned over the intelligence failures to detect Hamas's October 7th raid, indiscriminate killing of Israelis, the seizing of hostages, which galvanized support around the world for the state of Israel and its problems. How do you explain Hamas's action in committing this atrocity? I know you've covered the history of Israel's apartheid. It's been analogous to an apartheid regime and the coercive control of the Palestinians. But how do you explain Hamas's action in committing this atrocity? Because it's where many people strongly support the fight of the State of Israel.
Well, let's see, again, as you mentioned, Quentin, the issue did not start on the 7th of October last year, where it started from the time Israel was established and ethnically cleansed and committed over 70
Nelson Mandela in South Africa and the African National Congress, although there was some insurrection and guerrilla activity, there was no real conflict in a military sense. The ANC wasn't militarily armed. Isn't this destructive of the cause of the Palestinians?
Not at all. The international law gives any people under occupation the right to struggle by all means, including armed struggle, Quentin. If Australia was occupied tomorrow by any power, of course the Australian people are going to carry armed struggle and resist. And no one can dare to tell them not to do so. All colonialized people have fought against colonialism and carried armed struggle. So why should the Palestinian people be prevented? And plus the fact that, Israel have been killing Gazans, that the majority of people in Gaza are refugees, ethnically cleansed refugees, and lots of them from the very kibbutz, which they were, their parents were living and where they had their farms stolen from them by those colonialists, the kibbutz, So imagine yourself being kicked out of your land, kicked out of your house and farm, and living in a miserable situation in refugee camps. And few meters away, you can see the colonialists, enjoying the fruits of your farm. This is the situation. So,
It's an
do you blame,
it's
I wouldn't blame you if you go and, retaliate, and especially when they are also killing you. It's not that, and most of them are members of the Israeli army, reserved army. Hamas fighters.
Okay. It's an escalation of hate. I acknowledge that. The reason I ask that is that our Jewish
No,
friends
it's not
listen.
hate. Hate
What
for the
is it?
sake of hate. No.
Why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be hate?
It's a fight for freedom and right of self-determination. It's the fight for your rights, your legitimate rights. When you are fighting, against occupiers and oppressors and colonialists, they are the one who are, sort of the having the hate towards you. You hate. If you hate, sort of your oppressor. Yeah, okay. That I'll accept that.
Ali, maybe I can come at it this way. For a lot of our Jewish friends listening to this vodcast who are as distressed at the Netanyahu war cabinet and IDF's conduct and tactics in Gaza as you are, will say to me, Quentin, Hamas and its inevitable derivatives will never accept the state of Israel. Ali, do you acknowledge and recognize and support the continuing existence of the State of Israel?
Well, to start with Hamas, this is not correct, because only a few days ago, the leader of Hamas, Hani, accepted the two-state solution. Only a few days ago. And that's a repeat to a stand Hamas took years ago. So, that's to start with. Secondly, the PLO recognized the right of Israel to exist in 1988. And they just mentioned it. And we accepted the two-state solution. So, Israel refused that. And Israel is the one who's building Jewish colonies and continuing its war of genocide against our people. So where are those Jewish people, standing? Why they are silent about what Israel is doing? Now, having said that, this, this is not the position of Jews of the peace camp. There is a peace camp in Israel and outside Israel.
They're a very small influence, though, Ali.
They are, exactly. That's right. Yeah, but they are growing. It's a growing group, and because every day Jews are learning the true nature of Zionism. Zionism is bad for Jews as much as bad for us. And we have another slogan.
When you say Zionism, use the word Zionism, you're indicating extreme religiosity, are you not?
No. It's an ideology. There are lots of secular Jews who are Zionists.
Yes.
There are the religious Zionism and there is secular Zionism. Labour Party, for example, is a Zionist organization.
It's confusing, the use of the word Zionism.
So it's an ideology.
It's an ideology. Zionism is an ideology.
Colonialist ideology, as I mentioned, Quentin. The father of Zionism.
Isn't there a better word? Why don't you just use the word colonial ideology?
Well, let me tell you what Theodor Herzl, the father of Zionism, stated in his book, The Jewish State. He said, "Shall we choose Palestine or Argentina? In both countries, important experiments in colonization have been made. We shall take what is given us and what is selected by Jewish public opinion."
Okay.
Clearly. And the first Zionist conference in 1897 stated, the aim of Zionism is to create for the Jewish people a home in Palestine secured by public law. The Congress contemplated the following means to the attainment of this end. 1, the promotion on suitable line of the colonization of Palestine by Jewish agricultural and industrial workers.
Right.
So this is what Zionism is. It's a colonialist movement.
Thank you. Ali, I want to end here. I hate to be so crass as to raise domestic political impact of the Gaza carnage, but you know Australian politics very well. How might the Muslim Palestinian diasporas here registered to vote here in Australia at the next federal election? We know they won't vote for Peter Dutton and the Liberal, well, we reckon they won't vote for Peter Dutton and the Liberal National parties, but are they so disaffected with the Australian Labor Party that they'll vote for the Greens, who are strongly pro-Palestinian, or are there perhaps independent candidates in relevant seats who could attract support?
Yes, the community is extremely disappointed. Not only the Arab and Muslim community, but also, the community in general, Australian community, disappointed. For example, if you look at the demonstrations taking place all over the Australian cities, the overwhelming majority of them are Australians, so everyone is extremely disappointed by the two major political parties. I think the Green will harvest lots of votes out of this. They have taken an honorable stand in support of the and the recognition of the State of Palestine, supporting the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, and they called from day one for for a ceasefire. I think Labour will pay a heavy price, and if we speak about the Arab Muslim vote, the Arab Muslim vote, according to the last census, general census, and the last federal election results, our community's vote can influence at least 21 federal seats. Most of them, 15 of them, are held by Labour, 5 held by Liberal, and 1 by Independent. I think this is going to change the next election.
Well, we'll see on that point, Ali. You've been wonderful. Thanks very much for engaging with me and helping us to go through this despair together. Ali Kazak, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much.